Mr. Hern is recognized for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing today, and thank you to all the witnesses for joining us here. Tax advantage accounts are a tremendous benefit to hardworking Americans. Tax advantage accounts help Americans save for retirement, future health issues, and children's education. Republicans' Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017 expanded tax advantage education savings account, known as 529 accounts, to include K through 12 tuition. However, Congress can and should do more to help hardworking Americans afford everyday education costs. At a time when inflation is hurting the American people and the dollar is being stretched thin, 529 accounts need to be expanded to make K through 12 education more affordable. That is why today I'm introducing the Student Empowerment Act, which allows all students, including public, private, and religious schools students, to use 529 accounts to cover eligible education expenses such as tutoring, standardized testing fees, and educational expenses, therapies for students with disabilities, among other educational expenses. The Student Empowerment Act reincorporates homeschool students as equally to use a 529 savings account for educational expenses, ensuring all families can use these tax advantage accounts to pay for their children's elementary and secondary education. In a study from Brookings, average fall 2021 math test scores in grades 3 through 8 were an average 0.24 standard deviations lower relative to the same grade peers in fall 2019, while reading test scores were an average 0.14 standard deviations lower. The drop in test scores should be concerning to all Americans. To compare, math scores dropped a 0.17 standard deviations in 1 year from New Orleans evacuees after Hurricane Katrina. In a recent study from Tutor.com, demand for tutoring has skyrocketed 105% post-COVID as families cope with their children's learning loss. This new data suggests that parents are shelling out more of their hard-earned money to get children back on track. Congress should help these families by easing the financial burden of their children's learning loss. My bill is a step in the right direction, providing families with eligibility to pay for tutoring using a tax advantage 529 plan. Mr. DeAngelis, can you tell us why it's a good idea to expand 529 accounts beyond 12 through K to cover eligible education expenses such as tutoring, standardized testing, fees, and educational therapies for students with disabilities, among other educational expenses?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Schooling is just one way to get to an education, and some people in the homeschool community would actually argue that schooling in some ways, if it's not done right, could be antithetical to education. So expanding the expenses to allow for maximum customization on the part of the parents is a great step in the right direction towards empowering parents and empowering families to get the best education for their kid. That could be in a brick and mortar school, but tutoring is also, especially with supplemental tutoring, can lead to better outcomes for students as well. So we should allow for maximum flexibility, customization. This is a really good way to do that. And the benefits of these types of programs aren't limited to standardized test scores being improved. That's obviously a benefit. But another benefit could be non-academic, including reductions in crime later on in life, more of less likely to engage in activities that lead to teenage pregnancies as kids, as the previous congressman brought up as well. There's a study from New York City Harlem Children's Zone that found that winning a lottery to attend a charter school in New York City reduced the likelihood of teenage pregnancies by 59%. And I've also done a study on the topic from Milwaukee, finding that getting a voucher to go to a private school in Milwaukee, following those students later on in life until they were about 25 to 30 years of age, had huge reductions on the likelihood of them committing crimes, and also reduced the likelihood of paternity suits by about 38%. So these are all reasons why we should expand education freedom, not limit it. And you guys are in a great position to do that, and thank you for introducing the bill.
I recently read a report that said that you can tie direct incarceration rates back to how people read in the 3rd grade. And so we're certainly not heading in the right direction. We need to do everything in our power to change that. Ms. Sedlar, in your testimony, you say there's no excuse not to empower every family with the options necessary to make the choices that will change their children's lives, especially as the countries continue to strive to recover from the generational learning loss after COVID-19 pandemic. Do you believe 529 expansion beyond K through 12 tuition to be a worthy option?
Of course I do. I think that parents can definitely band together and utilize that functionality to improve their children's education, add on to that children's education. We've had a lot of success in Pennsylvania with some pods that have remained, some hybrid homeschool situations. So allowing those out-of-the-box modalities are critical in assisting our students.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.